Hi, I'm Christina, and I'm 25 years old. I tend to keep to myself a lot, even though I have a job and I'm not going to school. My family, especially my brother, might think I'm lazy because of this. How did I end up like this? Well, it all goes back to when I was in middle school. I've never really trusted people, and that started because of some tough times I had in middle school. Even though I say I don't trust people, there are many reasons why I feel this way. One big reason is that I felt ignored. I'm not exactly sure why, but it seemed like people didn't find me interesting because all I cared about was machines. I've always loved working with computers, and I was really good at it. This made me helpful at home, but soon my grades started dropping because I spent more time with computers than with friends. My parents got worried. By the time I finished elementary school, they were scolding me, asking how long I was going to keep playing with machines. As I moved through middle school, with my parents always scolding me, I started to think maybe I shouldn't be doing what I liked. So, I started to spend all my free time alone in my room, away from everyone. I cut off contact with the outside world. This made people at school think I was weird or even dangerous, and I ended up being isolated there too. My only friend during this tough time was my brother Keith. He always knew how to encourage me and make me feel better. With his support, I managed to finish school, but I didn't go to high school. Instead, right after finishing middle school, when I was about 16, I started doing jobs that I could do on a computer from home. I worked part-time and used the money to buy old computers. I would take them apart and rebuild them from scratch. This hobby of mine paid off. By the time I turned 20, I was able to build computers that I could sell. Things changed quickly when I started a business selling affordable computers. Soon, I became well known. By the time I was 25, I had made a small fortune. I was even able to give my parents $2,500 every month to help with household expenses and still had money left over. Even though I talked to my parents about my job many times, they didn't really understand it. We had some arguments, but eventually, they decided that as long as I could support myself, they didn't mind what I did. Because of this, they stopped interfering with my life, and I could live freely at their house. However, my brother didn't think highly of me. He used to be kind and supportive when I was in school, but maybe he got tired of me. Even after I turned 20, I was still spending most of my time in my room at my parents' house, working on computers. Eventually, my brother started treating me harshly whenever he saw me. Since I'm not one to keep quiet, we ended up having more and more conflicts, and now our relationship is really strained. Things got even worse after my brother got married. It turns out his wife was someone he'd been involved with since high school, but she never really liked me. She didn't like the idea of being my sister-in-law, and it seems like she influenced my brother against me. Because of all this ongoing tension, I started being seen as a problem in our family home. Even though I mostly stayed in my room, it felt like I was being attacked with constant hostility, which was a stark difference from my parents' concerned words. Our home, which used to be a safe and comfortable place despite the criticisms, suddenly felt like a place full of enemies. I no longer felt comfortable there, and I noticed my parents slowly siding against me and my allies disappearing one by one. Even though I was making enough money and contributing to household expenses, my brother and sister-in-law still saw me as a freeloader. They didn't understand what I was doing with my computer work. Slowly, they started saying things like they wanted to kick me out of the family home and live there themselves. Feeling completely estranged from my brother and his plans, I figured leaving wouldn't make much of a difference. If I left, I wouldn't have to keep contributing to household expenses, so I could save that money instead. It seemed like a silver lining in a way. As I was thinking about leaving, my brother suddenly brought up inheritance. He thought I was able to live comfortably because our parents had money. So, when the topic of me leaving came up, he basically told me to give up my claim to any inheritance because they would take care of our parents. But what he didn't understand was that the reason our parents could live comfortably without working was because of the money I was providing for living expenses. I didn't think they could keep living like they were without that money, but to my brother, I was just a burden in my room. I was ready to leave, but I wanted to confirm one last time if my brother was okay with it. When I asked him, he just laughed and told me they would be glad if I left already. I realized once again how little my brother understood me. He just didn't get it. I felt sorry for him and his wife, which made me more determined to leave our family home. A few days after my brother told me to leave, I was still staying in my room, but during this time, my brother and his wife were relentless in their efforts to get me out. They kept knocking on my door, stopped providing meals for me, and even told me to do my own laundry. But these were all things I would have to do if I lived alone anyway, so I didn't find it too troublesome. I wasn't just sitting back and accepting what they said. I felt like they were unfairly taking my place away from me, so I decided to prepare for some revenge. I'm good with machines, and my brother seemed to forget that. He didn't realize the power I had with access to a computer. I wasn't going to quietly leave just because he told me to. In my brother's eyes, his marriage and me being a shut-in sister was the only chance for our parents to see a grandchild. Knowing that my parents were blinded by this and even approved of me leaving, I decided to set a trap that would activate when I left the house. Finally, I found a new place to live, finished all the necessary procedures, and was ready to leave my family home. Just before I left a heartfelt message for my parents and brother. I reminded them of all the ways I had been providing for the family and accused them of forgetting all the good I had done. I wanted them to realize who the real problem in our family was. My parents seemed surprised for a moment, but they probably believed my brother would somehow manage. In the end, they just brushed off my words as bitterness. I'm sure they didn't take me seriously, but I thought it was better that way for now, so I decided to go ahead and leave the house. I brought a lot of equipment from my family home and bought more items as well, like furniture and appliances. I set everything up the way I liked, decorated the place with my favorite style, and made it super cozy. I found myself working even better than before. Living alone was scary at first, but it turned out to be really easy. The locals were friendly, and life was surprisingly comfortable. Since leaving my family home and doing everything on my own, I've been having a great time experiencing new things. But then I got a call from my mother. She asked if I did something to our machines. What do you mean? I asked. There's something wrong with the computers and electronics, she said. I had no idea about that. I used to take care of them for free because we were family, but since they treated me badly and kicked me out, even if they're my parents, they'll have to pay the regular price. They accused me of being greedy and asked for a discount, but I refused. I thought to myself, at least my friends don't treat me like this. I was relieved that another trap hadn't been sprung, but I still had to handle the situation with my mother. However, my mother didn't seem to like my reaction. She hung up abruptly, almost like a petulant child. Then she sent me a spiteful email saying something along the lines of, "Mean kids lose their friends." It made me wonder who the real adult was in this situation. Honestly, her behavior seemed self-centered, if not downright selfish. As for what I did to the family computer, I simply reverted all the adjustments I had made for free back to their original state. I bet to someone who doesn't know much about computers, it probably seemed like the computer started malfunctioning on its own. When I told them to contact the company to fix it, they threw a tantrum, but I expected as much, so I decided to leave it be. 6 months after being kicked out of my home, just as I was starting to settle into living alone, my father called me. I hate to ask, but can you lend me some money? He said. Excuse me? Lend you money? What do you mean? I replied, well, your brother and his wife have been spending recklessly. They seem to think we're rich, and it's nothing but complaints from them. They're always asking for money to buy this or go there. I had no idea about any of this. Why do you always come to me with everything? I mean, I've heard of daughters who live alone sending money home, but parents asking their children for money? Isn't that something you're supposed to do out of generosity? That's easier said than done, he admitted. Well, even $500 would help, my father persisted. I'm not giving you anything. I won't lend you money either. I have no intention of helping you out financially anymore. Of course, if you pay me for my services, I'll work on your machines, I replied calmly. You've really become stingy. I guess what Mom said was true, he grumbled. During my unemployed years, he had the nerve to say things like, you used to do whatever you wanted at home, but I didn't care. I just hung up. My father didn't send any emails, but he started calling me more than twice a day. I thought, what troublesome parents I have. A few days later, my brother, who seemed to be in a bind, called me. When I asked him why they were calling me, he said, tell me why our family home was wealthy before. He must have had a hunch that their financial situation had obviously worsened since I moved out, but it was too late. My current home was my comfortable place. Both my work and life were entirely contained in this house, and there was no way I was leaving it ever again. Maybe the reason our family was wealthy was because I was contributing $2,500 each month to the household. I replied. I didn't have to contribute that much, but I felt a sense of gratitude for being raised by my parents, so I gave more. So now, why would I continue to financially support a home that I was kicked out of? There's no way I would, right? I added. I see. So that's why Mom and Dad's financial situation suddenly worsened. My brother realized. I'm sorry, but even if you asked me to come back, I have no intention of doing so. I understand. Looking back now, what we did was terrible. I'm sorry, but it's too late for apologies, I concluded. Anyway, I had no plans to be involved with any of them in the future. Don't call me anymore, I told my brother, ignoring his protest, and hung up the phone. When I left home, I made up my mind never to get involved with them again. Forgiving them so easily was inconceivable to me. I decided to cancel my cell phone contract because I couldn't bear the situation of receiving calls on various matters anymore. 5 years have passed since I canceled my mobile contract and started living alone, and I got married. My partner works in the same field as me, and he understands my lifestyle. He helps with the housework instead. I thought about contacting my parents since they're technically my family, but it's too late. However, my husband expressed his desire to greet my parents and was curious about the current situation, so I hired a detective to investigate the situation at my family's home. Then a slew of problems came to light. After I cut off contact, my parents were desperate to maintain their lifestyle and keep my brother and his wife tied to the family home by borrowing money from various lenders. But they couldn't repay the money, and it accumulated interest, leaving them helpless. Currently, the debt I found from my parents alone exceeded $100,000. The house was used as collateral for the debt, and now it's a vacant lot where our family home once stood. While I felt a bit sad because of my attachment to my family home, I concluded that they reaped what they sowed. I decided to investigate my brother's current situation. He seemed to have suggested a divorce due to his wife's extravagant spending habits, but she didn't accept it. They're currently going through a divorce lawsuit, which is both time and money consuming. My brother's wife hired a lawyer and is resisting the lawsuit, leaving them at an impasse. They don't have children yet, and it's rumored that my brother is infertile. Concerned, I sent the detective to the hospital where they were being treated, and it seems that he really wasn't fertile. This disappointed my parents, who were hoping for a grandchild, and ended the cohabitation. The family home was sold to pay off the debt. That was the pitiful state of my family now. It was evident, just from a casual investigation, that meeting these people in this state was not advantageous for me or my husband. After all, I have a kind husband now, 4 children and a dog. We've bought a large home and are living the life that those people idealized. If they knew this fact, they would surely try to take advantage of it. I couldn't bear such a thing, so as soon as I knew this fact, I went to the local office and arranged so that my information could only be accessed there. I made sure never to get close to those people from my side and asked my husband to bear with not greeting them for our marriage. My husband looked disappointed, but when I explained the current situation, he seemed to understand, and he hasn't said anything since. When the situation at my family home calms down a bit and a time of reconciliation comes, I hope I can get along with my parents and brother.